the weather didn't provide enough variables for there to be any sort of blowout, unless he can't even beat it himself, if you know what I mean, at the weekends. But it's just sort of the sort of brutality of it, of how consistent he is.
Hello and welcome back to the Countersports Golf Podcast. I am your host, Liam Grice. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but we're back with a bang after another exciting major at the Open in Portrush. Before we get into the details of just how good a certain Scottie Scheffler was, I'd like to introduce our special guest today. It's Matt from National Club Golfer. How you doing, Matt?
Very good, thanks, Liam. Very kind of you to invite me onto the podcast. I've never been invited onto a podcast before, so I'm quite excited to do this. So yeah. It was a great week at the Open. Maybe not the excitement we wanted, and perhaps for some people not the winner we wanted. But yeah, no, it was. It's always good. It's always good watching the Open, being at the Open, and Open week is just the best week of the year, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more. I guess it's only fair to ask Kevin, how are you doing after watching Rory fail to win another major yet again? He's on a downslope now.
Liam, you're not going to get me with these jibes because I'm forever happy after Augusta. So there's no point in trying to get a rise out of me. Look, as Matt says, it was a good week. In some ways, it is the best week in golf. But maybe Sunday wasn't as exciting as many of us hoped. But look, I'm sure we'll get into it.
I will get you with a Rory jibe. I will. Yeah. It will happen. Well, I guess there's no real better place to start than the eventual winner by 4 shots. He had a pretty solid weekend of golf. I think that's fair to say. Scottie Scheffler. Matt, I'll come to you first. You were there at Portrush. Like you said, just how good was Scottie this weekend?
Yeah, I think when he shot 7 under in the I think it was the second round, which was made all the more remarkable because as I sort of followed them up the first hole in the second round. I think he played with Morikawa and Shane Lowry, and sort of the heavens opened and the rain really came down. And I only got halfway up the first hole, and then I literally sprinted back in. So I thought, oh, I'm not watching this in this rain. And you might have thought that his game might not have improved so much, or might not have stood up to the weather, but it obviously did. And I suspected that the Open might be the last major that Scottie won, just because the Masters is very much horses for courses place, and he clearly excels around there. Obviously, having won twice, the PGA Championship is basically just another PGA Tour event, so you could see him winning a few of them. And I don't see why the US Open isn't tailor made for his game. He essentially nearly won the US Open by mistake this year. He sort of fell into contention, didn't he? When he wasn't in contention at all until sort of the back nine. So I suspected the Open, and purely good from an experience perspective, unless I'm wrong, I think his debut at the Open was at St George's in 2021. So he hasn't even played in that many. And I suspected that sort of the links experience, his lack of links experience, would mean that the Open would be the last major he won. But very, very wrong, and the weekend played into his hands, because once he hit the front, the weather sort of left the golf course. It was very good conditions at the weekends, and although that might have favoured people like Rory and the like chasing him, it obviously favoured him as well, because there was apart from the golf course being a top sort of championship venue with plenty of difficulty, the weather didn't provide enough variables for there to be any sort of blowout, unless he can't even beat it himself, if you know what I mean, at the weekends. But it's just sort of the sort of brutality of it, of how consistent he is. It's just sort of fairway green, isn't it? And even sort of his putting has been his weakness before. And even when his putting has been his weakness before, he still managed to finish like 4th, 10th in tournaments. So when it is on, this is what happens, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you couldn't have put it better, Kevin. Matt alluded to it there. Scottie's just a little bit of a robot now. Saw it this weekend in the changing conditions. Do you expect him to just go on and pretty much win everything he can now?
Yeah, it's very difficult to say. No, I mean, even his double bogey wasn't exciting. In the last round, even when he did what me or you would do, Liam, trying to get out of a bunker.
Come on.
Even that wasn't. It's like, okay, is there something here? And then he birdies the next hole. Like, it's metronomic. It's and again, you don't want to go too deep, but it is Tiger like there's no getting away from it. And I know it was Matt in his sort of wrap up piece described him as Floyd Mayweather of golf, and like that's true. It's just like what do you do when there's a guy who just doesn't make mistakes? Again, even on the rare occasion, like I said, with the double bogey, it just doesn't seem to matter because I think he has on tour the highest percentage of birdieing his next hole after he bogeys. So what do you do when you have this guy who just goes around? I mean, Matt said on the second day when he shot 7 under, you're like, oh God, here we go. I sat down on Sunday and I was like, okay, realistically, yes, right, this is going to be Scottie's day. But you never know. Sunday of a major.
It wasn't impossible, obviously, was it?
Yeah, but then the first hole, he puts his drive slightly to the left, but then gets that bounce out of the heavy stuff into the second cut, and then his iron into the pin, where he just puts it off the back shelf, and it just rolls to within 3 feet, and you're like, wait, well, it's 3 o'clock and that's done. So I think it's very difficult. I mean, me and you, Liam, have sort of struggled doing our major previews of like, right, what do we talk about here? Because
I don't just want to talk about Scottie all the time.
we can't just talk about him, but this is what it is at the moment. And yeah, I think it's very difficult now going ahead to next year and just seeing anyone who can compete at this level, because again, as Matt said, he's got his putting sorted now, which is the one bit where you could kind of say, yeah, maybe if he lets a few putts slide, there's a chance for people, but that seems to have been fixed. And I saw a few people saying Rory must feel like Oppenheimer after telling Scottie to change his putter on TV, and he's like, what have I done? You know, I've created this monster. But yeah, I mean, it was so impressive. You're just sitting there looking and saying, there's nothing anybody else can do here, because he's that good. And it's hard to see him letting up from here. And unless he gets arrested ahead of another major next year.
We actually did sort of mention that on me and Tom did like a rap at the end of the third round, like a podcast, and he opened with Tom saying maybe he might get arrested again.
That's what it might take. That's what it might
take. That's the only way he's going to lose a major now.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to talk about a certain Englishman, but I'm going to move that to later, because then we can talk about it in a bit more detail. I'm going to ask you both now for your best and worst moments from the weekend. Matt, I'll come to you first. What was your favourite part of the Open experience as you were there on the ground?
From when you're there and it's each like organisation that's there gets given an inside the ropes pass, and it is a truly like brilliant thing to do. It's an incredible sort of privilege to be able to go inside the ropes, especially when you're following people like McIlroy, where you are just peering over people's shoulders through little gaps, trying to see the flag, trying to see his ball. So that would be my highlight of the week, just from a perspective of being there. You're obviously very, very grateful to be able to go to these events, and it's a very privileged position to be able to work at these events. But to go inside the ropes is incredible. On the in the third round, I followed Rory's sort of first sort of 12, 13 holes, and the first 4 holes were just electric. He birdied the first, he birdied the second. I think he parred the par 3 third, and then when he rolled in a birdie putt on the 4th hole. The 4th hole at Portrush it was like a bowl. A lot of the greens at Portrush are quite undulating around the greens. There's a lot of stadium holes that complement the fan experience, and the 4th hole is like that. It's like a bowl, and when he holed a birdie putt, that's probably the loudest cheer I've heard on a golf course. The crowds following him were incredible. There was probably a bit too many people. To be honest, because I think it's the most well-attended Open outside of St Andrews. There was just so many people, and I thought the vast majority of them were obviously following Rory. So I think that putt on the 4th hole, and then the eagle putt he holds on the 12th, in the same round, because his round had plateaued a little bit, where he made a few. He just made consistent putts, and then on the 11th, that shot where the ball came up out of the ground. I don't know if you saw that. Sort of, he hit his ball on top of another ball, and the ball came out of the ground.
Yeah.
So he bogeyed that. He bogeyed that, and his round had really run out of steam. And then when when he held the eagle putt, he was sort of putting towards me and the rest of the media that were inside the ropes, and it looked like he had left it about sort of 8 feet short. But there was a little slope at the front, sort of about 8 feet short of the pin, where he must have aimed to putt it to the top of that slope, and then it came down. And when that went in, that was quite the moment. So I'd say maybe Rory's eagle on the 12th hole in the 3rd round was maybe the moment that most golf fans would remember, in terms of the 2025 Open where Rory's concerned.
That's why he's the professional and we're not.
Yeah,
can I just jump in here? And this is me sort of nerding out slightly, but I feel like considering we have a man who was there, like when you see these boys up close, what is the thing that just makes you go, oh, is it the ball striking? Is it how they can swing is it the swing of the club? Is it the consistency on the greens? Like, what is it that blows you away the most of seeing these boys up close?
I think the ball striking's a good one. For example, when I saw Rory and Jordan Smith tee off on one hole in the third round, and obviously Jordan Smith's a top DP World Tour player, but he hit this like beautiful iron shot, and it's the noise, it's like the fizz of the ball. It makes different sounds. It certainly makes a different sound. And Scheffler would be a good example of that, because the way he sort of moves his feet and his swing, you can tell by the way he moves his feet in that unorthodox way that he's got such a understanding on how to strike the golf ball. So even just going to, if anyone can go to an Open and go to the driving range, or just get a good spot in a grandstand, or on a tee box or on a fairway, it does just make a different sound. The flight's just completely different. The ball sort of penetrates and flies in a different way, doesn't it? So I'd say that's probably the main difference, isn't it?
I had to ask. Oh no, I don't blame you. I think we all wish we could strike a ball as good as Scheffler. We'll move on to a bit of a negative. What was your least favorite part of the weekend? If you had to pick one, I know it's going to be hard because the Open is pretty good.
It's an interesting question. I'd say the most disappointing part maybe was, although the weather was glorious at the weekend, I suppose the most disappointing part was that the weather sort of abandoned the golf course, and it wasn't that test that we all like to see at the Open. The first few days were testing. The first day was windy and wet. Perhaps the second day wasn't that windy, but it was testing. And although the golf course looked absolutely amazing in the last 2 rounds, and the sun was shining, which speaks to a good fan experience and sort of a memorable day out for people, I do think that the worst part / disappointing part was maybe that the weather didn't provide any sort of excitement.
Yeah, the battling conditions always sort of make it a bit tougher for the players. Maybe you don't see the best of them Would you say that that's fair?
Yeah, perhaps. And that
Apart
would
from
be the
Scottie.
only thing. Yeah, that'd be the only thing that I suppose maybe Scheffler could have been remotely concerned about would be that the weather could provide a bit of variance, and that could speak to someone chasing him down. But I'm quite biased with the Open. Nothing about it really disappoints me that
No,
much.
it is hard to say. A
Yeah.
disappointing thing for the Open. Kevin, I'll move on to you. We'll start with your disappointment. Like I said to Matt, I'm sure there's not many you can find in as good a weekend at the Open.
Look, I don't know if it's disappointing. It just slightly annoyed me. But we're gonna go back to Scheffler. I thought the press conference before was nonsense. Like I just what like when you're literally the best golfer in the world, you win almost weekly, and you're standing up there saying like, "What's the point?" I mean, come on. Yeah, I know people accuse him of being boring, and this is one of his non-boring moments, but I just felt like it was a bit out of touch, and it was a bit like, "Oh, woe is me! Like, look at all my problems," and it's like, Scotty, in the grand scheme of things, like you have a pretty decent life. Like you're literally, you get to play golf for a living, and I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication. And yes, you don't see your family and you have a young child. Like I get that, but the life you're providing for these people around you, the life you have at the moment, there are so many people in worse situations, and like I don't know. I just found it a bit like I found it a bit out of touch from his perspective, and I was just a bit like, okay, I know I wanted to see something, but maybe this isn't what I wanted to see from an emotional standpoint. And I was just a bit like, oh God, like the point is you get to win golf tournaments and you generational wealth in your family for years to come. That's probably the point. And I like his interesting tidbit in that was like the fleeting feeling of winning, and I think that's interesting in a way, because it's like,
Mm.
well, it's very much, what have you done for me lately? But yeah, I when he just kept uttering the phrase, "What's the point?" I just it really got to me in a way that it probably shouldn't have, but it did.
Well,
That was sort of the
yeah,
viral clip, wasn't it,
yeah.
Yeah,
from the week? I found that. I mean, I think his attitude in that sense sort of speaks to why he doesn't connect or endear to fans the same way Rory does, the same way Mickelson used to, Spieth, um, even people like Fleetwood and McIntyre. I think they endear and connect to fans more than Scotty does. But in that sense, and I do actually massively agree with you, Kevin. I think he's speaking there from a massive point of privilege, albeit he has earned that himself. You know, he
yeah,
is good at
100%. Yeah,
golf and works because he wants to. Um, and that is a very interesting thing that that he has said. He doesn't find winning the Masters twice or winning the Open fulfilling, and I think this sort of metronome and maybe it sounds harsh, but sort of dullness to the way he speaks and his character is why um, people sort of found the weekend a bit monotonous, a bit like, oh, well, if it was Rory, we could really get excited about
Mm.
this. But with Scotty, there's full admiration for his quality, and I don't think anyone obviously dislikes him at all. But I don't think there's any like endearing love for him, and I think those quotes are just sort of typical of the person he is. And it's not a criticism; it's just sort of observations.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you know what? Despite all of his hardships, he still managed to win this weekend. So well done, Scotty. You battled
yeah,
through.
he's probably not enjoying it though. That's the only
No,
problem.
that's yeah, you know. So go and enjoy yourself, Scotty. I know you're listening. Come on.
Yeah, Scotty, I'm sorry if I made you mad after listening
He
to
doesn't get mad. He doesn't get happy. He's
yeah.
calm. He's fine. More of a positive. Kevin, what was your favourite part of the weekend?
Right, Liam, I think this will shock you because of my previous commentary on this man. But Bryson DeChambeau hit 7 over. He hit a 78 in the first round. And then on the last day, hit a 64. and did he finish top 10 at the end? I think he might have.
Certainly,
And
yeah.
I
Yep.
just I thought it was if Sunday and the whole weekend was Scottie as a purist, this was Bryson at his purest, just nonsensical, just the scientist goes to the lab after shooting a 78. And I just thought it was wildly entertaining. Look, as you know, Liam, I'm not a big fan of Bryson's personality, shall we
Fair to
say.
yeah.
There seems to be a theme developing. But he can be wildly entertaining. And in a way, it's the opposite to Scheffler, isn't it? Like, how are you hitting a 78 on the first day and finishing top 10? And like, when he was on the Sunday, I don't know about you guys, I flicked it on like pretty much straight away and watched the full day of it, and he just kept popping up in the early sessions.
Yeah.
Like, geez, Bryson's doing pretty well here. He's rolling in a couple of birdie putts, and then when he gets when he hits the back nine, you're like, my God, this fella is on. It was a bit like Rose at Augusta. It's like, he's plodding along pretty nicely, and it's like, well, he's unbelievable. And I just found it wildly entertaining. Like, look, it's not like in the grand scheme of things for him, it's great to finish top 10. Ideally, I would have loved for Rory to push a bit more. It didn't help that he double bogeyed the hole after Scottie double bogeyed himself. Like, there you're like, oh, maybe. And then again, what it feels like the last 15 years, every time he had a sneak for a birdie, he just let the putt go on the edge of the cup. But yeah, so while I'm happy Rory was there or thereabouts, he was in the second last group, he did okay. It would have been great to see him compete, but yeah, for me, Bryson on the last day it was gold. Because he still looked annoyed. He still looked annoyed at the first day, and you could make an argument if he didn't blow up as much as he did, he could have been there or thereabouts. I think there was one point on the Sunday where the top three consisted of Scottie, Rory, and Bryson, and it's like, wow, if you'd given me this coming into Sunday. But yeah, so I'd have to say that.
Well, that's what the Open does. It provides entertainment, and I don't think any three of us are biased, but it's probably we'll go second best major behind Augusta. I think it's unfair to say, unfair to rank Augusta any lower than one. Well, that's it for the majors, but there is a little tournament coming up soon. Don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the Ryder Cup. We're going to speak a little bit on that now, and I'm going to circle back to a point I was going to make before. It was a pretty good weekend for Matt Fitzpatrick as he looks to sort of make a charge for that Ryder Cup team. Matt, I'll come to you again first, as you were there. Did you see enough of Fitzpatrick to sort of convince you he should be in this Ryder Cup team?
Yeah, I mean, he did need these last few weeks. I suspect there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of continuity from the last team, I think, with Donald obviously still being captain. I don't think there's any nailed on names that are going to break into the team that didn't play last time. So even if Fitzpatrick, I mean, these last 2 weeks have helped him massively, I think, because it hadn't been a great year, had it? He split with Billy Foster, and when you split with the caddy, questions are sort of raised as to where your sort of mind's at and where your sort of season's going. But he's risen a lot. He played well at Scottish Open, obviously, and I think it's a shame that he didn't legitimately contend this last weekend. But there was a lot to take from the weekend. I don't think he's typically. I can't remember an open that he's contended in until now, really. I think he can get quite upset at opens. He can get quite upset at. He's quite sort of a mardy character, isn't he? He can almost behave quite petulantly sometimes. He's quite self-deprecating on the golf course. Having said that, I'm a big fan of Fitzpatrick's, and I think these last few weeks should give him the boost he needs to then be able to compete in the FedEx Cup playoffs. If he hadn't competed in the FedEx Cup playoffs, that is usually not that I think they're sort of worth watching as tournaments. But it is a barometer of your form, isn't it? And I think he'll probably get into them now. So that is obviously a good point for him. It's more activity for Luke Donald to watch. But even I feel like even if Fitzpatrick, I believe he's up to 13th now in the standings. Obviously there's 12 players on the team, but I think even if he was hovering around 15, 20 mark, I think Donald would look at him and say, I am going to pick you as a major champion and a former Ryder Cup player. He hasn't got the best Ryder Cup record, to be fair.
No.
The first Ryder Cup in 2016 he played in was a complete sort of write-off, wasn't it? He looked like a little boy, didn't he? And I think it's well documented that he was sort of massively in a frozen state of nerves for a lot of it. And then so it's in 2016 he made his debut, wasn't it? And then 2021 wasn't the best for him. It wasn't the best for anyone, obviously, that Ryder Cup, because they got absolutely hammered. But he was sort of paired with Westwood, who was sort of on his way out of his Ryder Cup career. And when he was able to play his own ball in Rome, I think he made like 6-7 birdies in the opening 7 or 8 holes in his match with Rory, playing with Rory. Yes, but like I say, he has got the best Ryder Cup records, which I think is definitely worth noting, because there are some top players with quite very poor Ryder Cup records. But I don't think there's anyone banging down the door to take his place from last time. Like I say, I think the continuity of the team from Europe to this year is going to be very, very. Is going to carry a lot of players over. 2 years later.
I'll just run through the top 6 now. Definitely not because I want to mention one name. Kevin, I know you know what's coming. Rory is obviously in first. Robert McIntyre is in second. Matt, you won't know, but he's my favourite golfer at the moment.
Okay, nice.
And I'm constantly talking about him.
Every single golf podcast he mentions Bob McIntyre.
Hey, he's second in the Ryder Cup standings for a reason,
He is.
Kevin. Come on. Tommy
He
Fleetwood's in third after a pretty solid year from him. Tyrrell Hatton fourth. Shane Lowry fifth. That'll put a smile on Kevin's face. And Sepp Straka sixth. Kevin, is there anybody not in that top 6, obviously apart from Fitzpatrick, you think is, as Matt alluded to, sort of nailed on due to previous endeavours in the Ryder Cup, or is there somebody who's not been there before that you sort of maybe think can sneak in to Luke Donald's team?
Yeah, I agree with Matt. Like, it's hard to see anyone, any new players really. They can't, like, because they were so impressive last time out in Rome. You know, they really were. That it is almost like, well, how much do you really change? You know, is it worth? I mean, obviously Rahm isn't in there, but you probably select John Rahm because he's John Rahm.
It's not a bad shout. Yep.
you know what I mean? Like, obviously he's on the Live Tour, and you know that's a talking point. But like, you're hardly gonna not pick a player of his quality who performed really well at the last Ryder Cup as well. I think the same goes. For Justin Rose, that experience, and Rose has played well this year as well. I know he didn't have the best weekend just gone, but I failed to see, honestly, unless Rasmus Højgaard pushes for it. I think it's very difficult to see where you're sort of newbies are coming. I think before we start recording, Matt, Liam, you mentioned Matt Wallace as someone who could potentially be in there. But look, I think it's nearly selecting itself basically, and it's gonna be pretty much the exact same, if not for one or two little changes.
I think Wallace is an interesting one, isn't he? I think he would definitely thrive in a Ryder Cup atmosphere, because he's sort of quite a fiery character himself. He's a very, very good player, like hits it a long way. He's a winner. He's won loads of times in the DP World Tour. The issue someone like Thomas Deitcher would have in that list is that Rahm is obviously going to get chosen. Yeah. So that is a bit of an issue for someone like Dietrich and Wallace, because they might look at the rankings and go, I'm 11th and 12th.
Yeah.
John Rahm is going to play, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
It might just be a straight swap for Rasmus and Nikolai Højgaard, and then the rest are the same.
And the Americans probably wouldn't even know the difference between the two of them, to be fair.
No. They could just alternate in the afternoons and morning sessions, couldn't they?
Yeah. That's a brilliant segue. We'll be impartial and talk about the opposition as much as we don't want to. America, the top 6 for them, I'll run through it quickly, is surprisingly in first is Scottie Scheffler. I know, who saw that coming. You've got Xander Schauffele, JJ Spaun, Russell Henley, Bryson DeChambeau in 5th, and Harris English in 6th. He had a pretty good weekend this time around. Somebody who maybe didn't have the best weekend this time around was Colin Morikawa. He is in 8th in the rankings at the moment, but a bad weekend for him, Matt. I mean, you don't not take Colin Morikawa, but does it maybe put a little bit of a voice of doubt in the captain's mind?
Yeah, I think possibly, but I think where America usually have their teams set, I think Morikawa will benefit from it not really being set, because realistically, Colin Morikawa is definitely going to be at the Ryder Cup, because say if you have Thomas, Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Keegan, Maverick McNeely, Harman, Novak, you're not, for example, you're not going to choose Ben Griffin over Colin Morikawa. It might be that they both qualify, get chosen, if you know what I mean, or qualify, but it's just in a situation where there's a lot of sort of ambiguity and not a lot of no standouts in that second group of 6 players.
Yeah,
I think he's obviously going to play. Having said that, like, it was very predictable that he played badly last weekend, and it was very predictable that he played badly in Scotland. He drafted in Billy Foster, didn't he, as his caddy. So he's got uncertainty on the bag. He's picked fights with the media this year for no sort of massive reason. So it's clear there's clearly a bit of his last few months and season has been a little bit unsettled. He started his season very well, I think. And he's clearly a top player, like a double major champion at the Open and at the PGA Championship. 2 different types of tests there. So he's always been a top iron player. Maybe his putting isn't that good, comparative to his level, obviously. But players like Harris English and JJ Spaun, I think the top 6 is sort of set there. I suppose the next question is what happens with Keegan Bradley, isn't it? I suppose
that's exactly where I was going to go.
Himself?
Yeah.
I really want him to pick himself.
May as well.
It'd be great.
Surely, like there's not 12 Americans better than him. And I think they can get away with it as it's a home Ryder Cup, because unfortunately the Ryder Cup is sort of spiraling into a bit of a predictable thing where the home team does usually win. And I think if he was captain, one of his vice captains could sort of take the brunt of the responsibility, and he could play. And as much as I think Europe have got a good chance, it just seems that it just swings the way of the home team. So if it was an away Ryder Cup, I suspect Keegan would be more invested in being a captain rather than trying to play on his own team. But as it's a home Ryder Cup, I think he wants the thrill of playing in front of a crowd. I think he's got every right, because there's arguably not even like 6 better Americans than him, let alone 10 or 12.
Well, I mean, that's what the Ryder Cup's all about, and definitely Keegan Bradley, like you said, home Ryder Cup. He'll want to play up to that crowd and create the best atmosphere he can for his lot, and maybe we'll see a smile at Scottie if he manages to do that. One more talking point before we end. Just another American that I want to get Kevin's thoughts on. Wyndham Clark shot up the Ryder Cup rankings in recent weeks. He's gone up 6 places to 16th. He's on the periphery. Do you think he can manage to sneak his way in? Obviously, Matt said there's maybe not the best selection of American golfers this time around. Is he somebody you'd maybe be looking for as a wild card pick?
Yeah, I mean, geez, he has to be in the thinking. He's a major winner at the end of the day, and I think once you've won a major, you're sort of, while you're in your prime, regardless of how you're playing, you're always going to be in the head of the captain as one of your picks. I know he played well for some of this last weekend. Obviously, didn't have the best finish to it, but Yeah, you have to be. And I'm just going through the list here that you don't really after you get past Morikawa at 8 for the US, it's all very similar in terms
Yeah.
of how you'd feel. And then so you've Bradley, you've Brian Harman, you've Andrew Novak, Patrick Cantley, Sam Burns, Wyndham Clark, like Cam Young, these boys. You're kind of looking for your major winners there in your Wyndham Clarks, your Keegan Bradley, and your Brian Harmons as well. And you're just like, yeah, you kind of these lads know how to win. So, and yes, it's a different test, but at the same time, you want. I think what the Americans have in terms of what the Europeans maybe don't have in abundance are these sort of individual major winners, whereas the Europeans obviously they all seem to like each other, which usually helps. Whereas you can sort of sometimes question that with the Americans at times. But when you have these major winners, I think, and they're in their prime and they're sort of coming into a bit of form, I think you'd be mad not to pick them, really.
Definitely. Before we head off, we're gonna, in traditional counter sport style, I'm gonna get really stupidly early predictions for the Ryder Cup from both of you. Kevin, you can go first. How do you think it's gonna play out?
I'm tempted to give the very, very boring answer of what Matt mentioned. The home team always wins.
But is there a but?
Do you know what? Let's have a bit of fun here. Keegan Bradley selects himself and doesn't win a point, and the European team win the Ryder Cup.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear.
Let's say I'll go even more specific. I'd say retain. So they don't even win it. They just retain.
Matt?
I do sort of think, there is the home Ryder Cup thing that we've talked about, and it is very difficult to win away just because of the fans and the way the golf course is laid out for the home team and things like that. But I do, just for a bit of fun, a bit of variance. I'll say Europe will win it because I just think the Keegan Bradley stuff is just so confusing and chaotic. He's revealed that even when he got given the captaincy, they said to him that they wanted him to be the playing captain. So they've sort of orchestrated this chaos from the get-go. And I saw that Jamie Corrigan from the Telegraph reported that there's always been a captain's agreement, but now there's sort of like a little clause in it where if Bradley plays, he's allowed to delegate his responsibilities to a vice captain. So I just think that sort of adds to the chaos because that it is very much gearing up to him playing, isn't it? As opposed to being a captain, and whoever that captain is, one of his vices, it's just a very unorthodox and different way of going about it. And Europe are just, and Luke Donald's got his sort of system set, he's got his team set. I think the continuity might take Europe to the win, is what I'm saying. I think so. I'll say Europe will win the first away Ryder Cup since Medina.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Europe are winning the Ryder Cup.
Grant Snedeker, US Ryder Cup captain, really has a ring to it, doesn't it?
That's all we've got time for today. Thank you to Matt for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed coming on the podcast. It's been really great to have you. As always, thanks to Kevin for joining me. Sorry we didn't get a chance to talk about Rory as much this time out.
Don't worry, I got to mention him. That's okay.
Don't forget to check out our podcast on YouTube and on Spotify and all other good platforms. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.